I used to believe that love was something loud. Big gestures. Public declarations. Grand promises. But with him, love was quiet. And that was what made it feel real. In the beginning, he didn't need to say much. He showed it in the way he paid attention. He remembered things I forgot about myself. The way I liked my coffee. The shows I pretended not to care about but always watched. The small habits I never mentioned out loud. It felt like he was constantly observing me, not in a controlling way, but in a way that made me feel seen. When I spoke, he listened. Not halfway. Not while checking his phone. He looked at me like my words mattered. Like I mattered. Even on days when he was exhausted, when work had drained everything out of him, he still found energy for me. He would ask how my day was and actually wait for the answer. He would notice if something was off, even before I said anything. Sometimes he knew before I did. He used to say, "If you're okay, I'm okay." And I believed him. I never had to ask for care. It was just there. Natural. Effortless. If I was sick, he became attentive in a way that felt almost instinctive. If I was tired, he'd quietly take over whatever I was doing without making me feel weak for needing help. He made me feel protected without ever making me feel small. There was a safety in that. A deep, calming safety. I felt chosen. Every single day. He didn't treat loving me like a sacrifice. He treated it like a privilege. Like something he wanted to do, not something he had to do. And that difference, it changes how you see yourself. I started to believe I was worthy of that kind of love. He used to open doors for me, not because he thought I couldn't do it myself, but because he wanted to. He would walk on the side of the street closer to traffic. He'd check if I got home safely, even when he knew I would. He'd ask if I had eaten, if I was warm enough, if I needed anything. And the thing is, it wasn't about the actions themselves. It was about what they meant. They meant I was important. They meant I was considered. They meant I was a priority. When you're treated that way long enough, it rewires something inside you. You stop bracing yourself for disappointment. You stop questioning your place in someone's life. You relax into the relationship because it feels solid. I trusted him. I trusted that what we had was stable. That it wasn't temporary. That this wasn't just the honeymoon phase people warn you about. Because it didn't feel performative. It felt consistent. He used to say things like, "I've got you," in moments that didn't even require reassurance. And somehow, those words stayed with me. They became a foundation. A promise I never thought I'd have to question. Friends would comment on how attentive he was. How lucky I was. And I agreed. Not in a bragging way, in a grateful way. I felt like I had found someone who genuinely understood what partnership meant. Someone who didn't disappear emotionally when things got uncomfortable. Someone who didn't make me beg for basic care. I didn't feel like I had to compete for his attention. I didn't feel like I had to earn his kindness. I was just loved. And that kind of love changes the way you show up in the world. I was softer. More confident. More secure. I stopped doubting myself so much. I felt grounded. Because when someone treats you like you matter, you start believing it. Looking back now, I realize how deeply that version of me trusted the future. I trusted that what we had was growing, not fading. I trusted that the effort I saw was permanent, not conditional. I trusted that the man who would do anything for me would always be there. At the time, it never crossed my mind that this version of him could disappear. That the care I took for granted could slowly vanish. That the love that felt so steady could become distant. Because when someone shows up for you consistently, you stop imagining a world where they don't. I thought love, once proven, didn't need to be questioned again. And that belief. That's what made what came next hurt so much more. At first, nothing felt dramatic. There was no explosion. No argument that marked the moment everything fell apart. It started quietly. So quietly that I almost missed it. He didn't stop loving me all at once. He just stopped noticing me. The messages became shorter. The pauses between replies grew longer. The questions he used to ask without thinking slowly disappeared. When I spoke about my day, his attention drifted. His eyes were there, but his mind wasn't. I told myself he was tired. Work stress. Life pressure. A phase. I didn't want to be the woman who complains about nothing. The woman who creates problems where there aren't any. So I stayed quiet. I adapted. I lowered my expectations without realizing that's what I was doing. Little by little, I started filling the silence for both of us. I asked how he was. I checked in. I adjusted my tone to match his mood. And he let me. The care I once received without asking now required reminders. Not spoken ones, emotional ones. I waited for moments when he seemed open. I chose my words carefully. I didn't want to sound needy. I didn't want to push him away. So I carried the relationship more than I should have. The first time I noticed it clearly was something small. Almost insignificant. The kind of thing people would laugh about if I told them. I was sitting on the couch, feeling drained, asking him if he could get me a glass of water. He didn't move. He sighed. Not loudly. Just enough. And said, "Can't you get it yourself?" The words weren't aggressive. But they landed heavy. I remember freezing for a moment, confused by how such a simple request had suddenly become a burden. I laughed it off. Made a joke. Got the water myself. But something shifted inside me. It wasn't about the glass of water. It never was. It was the realization that something I once received naturally now felt like too much to ask for. After that, the pattern became clearer. He stopped anticipating my needs. He stopped offering help. He stopped checking in unless I initiated it. The effort didn't vanish completely, it just became inconsistent. Unpredictable. And unpredictability is exhausting. I started questioning myself. Was I asking for too much? Was I becoming dependent? Was I imagining things? I compared the present to the past and felt guilty for missing who he used to be. I told myself people change. Relationships evolve. Love matures. But deep down, I felt something else. Distance. Not physical distance. Emotional distance. He was still there, but not present. Still mine, but no longer with me. Conversations felt transactional. Affection felt scheduled. The warmth that once wrapped around me effortlessly now required perfect timing. I became careful. Careful with my needs. Careful with my words. Careful with my expectations. And the more careful I became, the smaller I felt. I noticed how I stopped sharing parts of myself. How I hesitated before asking for help. How I started doing everything alone, even when I didn't have to. Because needing him felt risky now. The man who once made me feel safe was slowly becoming someone I had to emotionally manage. And that hurt more than any argument could have. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the old him. A kind gesture here. A soft moment there. Just enough to keep me hoping. Just enough to make me doubt my own feelings. Those moments were the most confusing. They made me wonder if I was overreacting. If I just needed to be more patient. More understanding. Less sensitive. So I stayed. I waited. I told myself love isn't always equal. That sometimes one person gives more. That maybe it was my turn to be strong. But strength slowly turned into silence. And silence turned into loneliness. I felt alone while being married. Invisible while being loved, or at least, while being told I was loved. And that's when it hit me. The glass of water wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. It said, "You're not my priority anymore." And once that thought enters your mind, everything else starts making sense. Every ignored message. Every sigh. Every moment you felt like an inconvenience instead of a partner. I realized I wasn't mourning a relationship that ended. I was mourning the version of it that no longer existed. And that realization. That's when the pain truly began. There wasn't a single moment when I decided I was done. No dramatic goodbye. No final argument that gave me closure. It was slower than that. It was the accumulation of small disappointments that finally became impossible to ignore. One day, I caught myself hesitating before asking for anything at all. Not because I didn't need help, but because I didn't want to feel like a burden. And when that realization hit me, it scared me. I had changed. Not in a growing way. In a shrinking one. I was quieter. More careful. Less expressive. I filtered my words. I swallowed my needs. I adjusted myself to fit the version of love that was left. And that's when I understood something that was impossible to unsee. Love doesn't make you disappear. Love doesn't make you feel heavy for having needs. Love doesn't require you to earn basic care. The problem was never the glass of water. The problem was what it represented. Indifference. I started paying attention, not to what he said, but to how I felt around him. And the answer was uncomfortable. I felt anxious. I felt lonely. I felt unseen. I was still giving. Still trying. Still hoping. But I was no longer receiving. And no matter how much I minimized it, I knew the truth. I was in a relationship where my presence was optional. That realization broke something inside me, but it also woke me up. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped asking for reassurance. I stopped chasing moments of affection. Not as a punishment, but as an experiment. And what happened next told me everything I needed to know. Nothing changed. He didn't notice the distance. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't reach for me. The silence stayed silent. And that silence gave me clarity. I understood then that I was holding on to memories, not reality. That I was in love with who he used to be, not with who he was now. And loving a memory is one of the loneliest things a person can do. I grieved quietly. Not just the relationship, but the version of myself that believed this love would last forever. The woman who trusted without fear. The woman who felt safe. Letting go of that was painful. But staying would have been worse. Because staying meant accepting a life where my needs were an inconvenience. Where my presence was tolerated, not cherished. Where I slowly disappeared trying to keep peace. I chose myself. Not in a loud, dramatic way. But in a quiet, honest one. I stopped begging for effort. I stopped justifying indifference. I stopped explaining why I deserved basic care. And in that space, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. The anxiety eased. The constant self-doubt softened. I began recognizing myself again. The parts of me that had gone silent slowly started speaking back. I remembered that love should feel safe. That it should expand you, not contain you. That being alone is far less painful than being alone with someone. Walking away didn't mean I failed. It meant I finally listened to what my heart had been telling me all along. The man who once did everything for me